All right, everyone. Good morning and welcome back once again to the UAE Careers Community Virtual Fair. My name is Shweta and I'm hosting this Zoom room for today. I have dropped a couple of house rules in the chat just for all of you to quickly read through as we begin the session. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Jeff Evans. Mr. Evans is originally from Wales in the UK and has over 26 years of teaching and professional leadership experience in the international education sector across Europe, the Far East, and the United Arab Emirates. His work is generally in collaboration with a diverse range of stakeholders like school owners, investors, regulatory bodies, local government agencies, inspection teams, parents and student councils, and of course, principals and school leadership teams. The ability to speak and relate to colleagues or customers from a wide range of backgrounds and cultures is increasingly important. And Mr. Evans has graciously offered to spend time with us this morning to talk to our community on interview preparation. Over to you, Mr. Evans. Thank you.
Good morning, Shweta. Good morning, students, colleagues. Thank you all for joining this morning, and I hope this is useful. So what I'm going to do first of all is just try and share some slides with you, okay, which I hope you can see. So what I'll do this morning is to try and talk through some interview tips and skills based on my work with different stakeholders. So this would include schools. Obviously, most of my work is with schools. And other bodies as well. So let me give you first of all a little bit of background, just so that you have, most of you don't know me. My original career was as a teacher. So as a teacher and a head teacher, and more recently I've been working as a consultant with different schools. So mostly Abu Dhabi Airline, some in Dubai and Sharjah and across the UAE, all right? So I'll leave that there for you to read through. I'm not gonna read through it all. So basically, I'm grateful for the invitation this morning and hope some of this is useful to you. Okay. So preparation for interviews. Interviews can be quite stressful experiences. We are mostly nervous when we go into an interview, and I've tried to make this session relevant to job interviews, career interviews with universities, and we make it as broad as possible. Some of my work has been with schools, so it's been interviewing teachers, principals, interviewing companies when I worked with the government, so different stakeholders. So these are some of the ideas that I thought maybe would be helpful this morning. I got these on to see. So obviously the first thing is to find out as much as you can about the context. So whether that's a company or a university or a job, you want to go in being well prepared. So you basically should be researching, everything you can find out about the role specifically, the company, where it is. Is it a local sort of Abu Dhabi or Dubai based company? Is it international? If so, where is the balance, the headquarters, etc. Also, read through the company history or the university history if it's a university. Anything to do with external articles. I've said inspection reports. I'm, I'll come back to schools now and again. I'll warn you of that first of all. The directors of the company, if it's a company or if it's a university, if you're looking at courses, you want to look at the professors and what they're interested in, what the company, what the department researches, what the department studies, that kind of thing. Because especially with universities, it's pretty broad. If you're doing a physics degree or computer science degree, there's lots of different specialities. So if you're interested in a particular area, you want to find out about that. So be as prepared as possible. Look at anything new that they've done, any newsletters that they'll have, updates, social media, that kind of thing. There's a lot now on different social media platforms, and many companies and schools and universities are kind of moving towards that now, actually, as a communication channel. So you want to try and absorb as much information as you can. Okay. One thing I would say is if you're looking at comments and feedback from whether it's from customers or employees or even parents, if it's a student, if it's a school, take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because those are comments or views, but they're not necessarily up to date or accurate. Okay. And when you look at the web page, remember to look at what isn't there. Remember to look at what you're not seeing, because the web page, especially for for hotels or holidays, is a classic. They show you what they want you to see. So you're getting one view or one picture. So dig deeper than that. Try and find out as much as you can about the company or the college. Okay, I'll go through some of these slides quickly, but I didn't say at the start there's obviously an opportunity to put questions if you have any in the chat box, and we'll try and answer those at the end. But I just want to try and cover as many different aspects as I think will be useful for you this morning. So make notes. I'm what used to be known as a visual learner. So I like spider charts or bullet lists or mind maps or whatever you call it. It helps me to see things very much. So I'm going to sit down, if I'm doing research, I'm going to sit down and do probably a spider chart so that I can organize my thoughts and my research, make notes. So you're going in well prepared, basically. To do it well, it could take you some time, but that's very, very, very useful, very productive time. Okay, plan ahead. I'll share a couple of stories. I had an interview once in Abu Dhabi and I went to the wrong office, which was excellent because I was using Google Maps and the link was old. So I went to the office in time, walked in, sat down, and they kind of looked at me and I looked at them, and I was in the wrong office, which was very embarrassing and quite stressful because I had to then race across to find the other place. So find out exactly where you're going. If you're using, if you're going by vehicle, make sure you know where to park, especially in Dubai, that can be challenging, finding parking. Okay, know exactly where you're going. If you're using public transport, etc., plan ahead, get there early. I would suggest you're there at least half an hour early. And if you're online, I've got to keep remembering this. I'm actually reading now, so I'm looking down. But if you're doing an online interview, you want to be looking into the camera straight ahead, so not down or around. And when we come on later, we'll come on to non-verbal communication. One of my challenges with the great joy now of online meetings is actually looking straight ahead and not looking around, because in a physical interview or in a physical meeting, I would use hand gestures and I would move around. Whereas when you're in front of a computer, you probably kind of want to be staring straight ahead a little bit more. So you're looking into the camera, which is the top of the screen. Okay, positive and enthusiastic, modulate your speech. I have to think carefully about my speech and not speaking just at one level. I have to try and remember to have emphasis and modulation and variation in my voice so that the interviewer or the panel or whoever don't fall asleep. And the last one is to be confident and not arrogant or too clever. So, we'll come on to non-verbal communication in a minute. But I think the key, or one of the points to bear in mind is to be yourself. There's no point in presenting a different sort of image or a different person really at an interview. Okay, so plan ahead, always useful. Dress smartly. Now I'm obviously sitting at home. I put on a shirt and tie this morning because if I'm doing anything related to work, I like to be smart. There's quite a variation in this part of the world with the different cultures. Some male colleagues won't wear ties, for example. They won't wear jackets. Some male colleagues will wear like a polo shirt and a jacket. So there's a little bit of a variation, but you want to be as smart as possible for an interview. And I will qualify this by saying that I'm talking here about kind of office-based or professional jobs more really than other work. You need to kind of align your outfit and your appearance to the job you're going for, or to the course. Okay. Body language is important. We'll come on to that, and eye contact. And also smiling. I think smiling helps you to be relaxed. You don't want to be grinning and laughing throughout the interview, but you also want to be, comfortable and able to smile and able to look the panel or the interviewer in the eye and interact in a sort of a calm way, but a confident way also. Okay, so this gentleman here chewing gum with his hand like this, kind of, don't know what sort of image that's conveying. It's not perhaps most focused. Okay. First impressions. Now, I hope you can see these. They're a little bit small. Two different quotes about first impressions there. The one on the right is interesting. It says that we size people up, where we make a judgment about people, which we shouldn't, but we research has shown that we form an opinion of somebody anywhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. And there are lots of things that go into that. There are things like eye contact, appearance, what they say, how they say it, etc. And then on the right there, Franz Kafka says that first impressions are always unreliable. So we've got kind of conflicting views. First impression is important, definitely. Okay, so in the chat box now, I'd like to have some ideas from you, please. This is an interesting point, but this is talking about outfits or how you dress for an interview. This is a male candidate, and this is a kind of professional office-based job. So I'd be interested to see here what you think of this. If you want to share any views in the chat box, sorry. Obviously the right-hand side is more casual, the left-hand side is more formal. So perhaps, what can I ask you? Let me ask you a focused question. What would my own appearance today, if I was going for an interview, I would definitely change in one way. See if you can think of what that may be, if I was going for a job interview or a professional interview. Let me stop sharing now, see if there's anything in the chat box. New message. Yeah, it depends on the type of job. Definitely, if I were going for a school-based job. Jewelry, yeah, that's true. Jasmine says jewelry should be allowed. It's formal, yeah. I don't have any jewelry. I had a earring many years ago, but it's gone now. What I would definitely do if I were going for an interview today is just to tidy up my beard, which is a bit scruffy. It's due for a trim, so I would definitely tidy that up. Otherwise, I'm kind of dressed reasonably tidily. So yeah, it definitely depends on the job, but it's worth thinking about. Okay, let's go back to the notes. Okay, so for male candidates, you want to be smart and tidy and clean and well presented, etc. That will depend very much. Okay, and then also for female dress code, just a point about the difference between male and female dress code. I've worked with schools for many years, and it's often a complicated area, both for students, like sixth form students. Some of you are in high school or sixth form, and I know from a teacher or school leader's perspective that dress codes are tricky because there's always grey areas, always boundaries. So you'll know yourself what you consider to be, smart, professional, and what you don't. So these are just some ideas. Okay, so for the males, suit and tie. Female outfits, again, it depends very much on the job. You may disagree or agree with some of these, and it will vary. But think about what you're wearing, think about how you look, and dress as well as you can for the occasion, I guess. Okay. Right, non-verbal communication. I'm trying my best to look into the camera. I'm reading the slides. I can actually see my screen, and I can't see much else. So I'm kind of speaking, in an artificial way here to the computer. If you're in an interview, hopefully it'll be face-to-face once the current pandemic situation calms down and settles down. Hopefully we'll get back to a situation soon where you have face-to-face interviews. Non-verbal communication is very, very important indeed. So I wanted to spend a bit of time on that. Look at this pie chart. To me, that's quite fascinating. What you convey by aside from what you say. So the way that you speak. Look, 38% is the way that you speak. So I mentioned earlier modulation. I have the tendency when speaking to speak very flat, and it's quite boring. So I have to remember to try and vary my voice. Same with teachers. I've been in quite a few classes where the teacher just speaks at the same volume and tone, and it's kind of not, it helps if there's variety. Body movements. Some of us will speak with our hands. Some of us will move around. Some of us will, use gestures and will point and so on. So there's a lot to think about there. Non-verbal communication is really worth considering when you're in the interview, whether it's online or whether it's in a panel or in a room, in a meeting room, for example. This is a kind of an informal meeting here. Okay, so what emotions or energy do you see here with these 4 candidates? These are the same candidate in 4 different poses. What do we see? What do we think? Zehra says excitement. Jasmine says too relaxed. I'm guessing Jasmine too relaxed is the one on the left who's kind of got a newspaper over his eyes, half asleep. Marshad, yeah, 3 of them looking uninterested. Definitely this gentleman here looks as if he's bored. He looks as if he's been sitting there for an hour waiting, to be fair. Both of these 2. Yeah, this one looks more awake. He actually looks very interested, doesn't he? Okay, so there's an idea of example of body language, the way that they sit in, their facial expressions, etc. The one on the right gives a better impression, definitely. Yes, JJ, definitely. That's very true. And depending on the interview, you might be alone waiting, you might be in a room with 4 or 5 other people, all interviewing for the same job, so or the same course. Okay, right. So body language. Right, now we've got a lot of text, and I kind of perhaps apologize for the amount of text, so I'm going to let you read this. I'm not going to read through it all. First of all, a little bit about facial expression, eye contact, and then second is posture, how you're sitting. So I'll ask you please to read through those. Have a minute of reading time. Be quiet. So if you look at the way that you're sitting, I'm actually at the moment supporting my head on my hand here, which I probably wouldn't. I'd probably sit, in a more upright way. But if we go back, let me just take you back to that previous slide. The way that you sit in an interview is coming back to the idea of trying to be comfortable and relaxed and confident, yet appear, professional, focused. So there's a bit of a balance there. Okay. So try and sit in a focused way. Right, next one. These 2 colleagues or these 2 people are actually having an interview, and they both look fairly engaged. If you look at the eye contact, the candidate on the left is leaning forward a little bit, which shows that you're interested and you're listening. If you sort of actually lean forward. We'll speak a bit about eye contact in a minute. But coming back to posture, they both sit in, upright, and they both looking professional. You don't really want to be sort of leaning back or rocking on the chair or anything like this. Okay, so posture, think about that. And eye contact, I've got a homework task for you here, whether you're a teacher or a student, it doesn't matter, you can do this. Think about eye contact. So if we look on the left there, this talks about what our eyes convey about a conversation or about us. Look at the honesty. It's definitely true that if you're looking at somebody when you're speaking at them, it conveys interest, but it also conveys that perhaps you're telling the truth. I think some of the detective programs on TV, on Netflix and so on, you see people looking around when they're nervous or when they're perhaps, trying to hide something. So eye contact is important. And what I would suggest to you, not now obviously, but another time, what I would suggest to you, I'm keeping half an eye on the time here, is that you practice this with either with a friend or a family member if you're comfortable. Just have a conversation with them and think about eye contact. So have a practice interview or have a discussion with them about something serious or professional, and look at them and ask them to tell you about your your body language, your non-verbal communication, and your eye contact as well. Okay. Especially if you're in a panel, if you're in a room with a few people, you kind of want to be talking to different people. You're not just going to talk to the person who asks the question. You're answering around the room. So you're going to be looking at different people at different times. So eye contact, non-verbal communication, and the science behind that. Some notes here which are detailed. We'll send these on to you. I'll ask the team at Desk and Curtin University, the organisers, ask them to send these on to you because these might be useful. And again, I hope the session today is useful and is interesting. So we've talked about eye contact. Nodding is interesting. Sometimes, when you agree and you nod to show that you're in agreement. But one thing to remember is that when we're nervous or when we're in a situation where we're under pressure, our gestures will be exaggerated. So we might nod more than usual, which could look a little bit odd. The last point here talks about keeping your head still as much as possible. I've got a habit of doing this now with the beard. I also got a habit of moving around. So I need to try and remember to try and, as far as possible, stay still, especially in front of the computer. And monitor my movements, which I don't do in a physical room, or in a meeting. It's a lot more relaxed and natural, I think. So some of this will apply perhaps more to online meetings or interviews, and some to face-to-face physical meetings. Okay, so what you're doing with your eyes, what you're doing with your head. Now then, what about the questions? That's an important part of the interview. Obviously, the interview, we've talked about behavior in the interview. The questions will depend totally on the interview, what it is. If it's for a job, they may well ask you some challenging questions. They probably will ask you some challenging questions, try and put you on the spot. So how do you react to a difficult question? What are you going to do? You can see there are two reactions. So I'm going to stop sharing these for a minute and I'll see what we've got in the chat box. How do you react to a difficult question? If you get a question that catches you off guard, what do you think? How do you think you could or you should react? Mershad, thank you, says rephrase the question. Good. If you watch the news, you'll see politicians do this all the time. They'll say things like, oh, that's a really good question, which is giving them 10 seconds to think about it. They might ask to repeat the question or to clarify the question. Any other input, any other ideas, please, in the chat box? How will you respond to a difficult question or a tricky question? Okay. Be prepared, think about it. Again, be prepared, because if they do ask you a question that you really don't know, I've had this many times in different interviews. Sometimes it's best to be honest and say, here we are, who's this? Sarah, thank you. Sarah or Miss Howe, I don't know, answer it honestly. Yeah, if you don't know, sometimes it's best to say, I'd have to research that, or I'd have to seek advice or seek guidance from the team or something like that. But, be prepared for tricky questions. You may get tricky questions. That's partly the point of the interview, to see how you respond under pressure. Okay, now then, ending the interview. We've got about 5 minutes left. At the end of an interview, certainly a job interview, it will be common for them, if it's a company and you're going for a job, it'll be common to say, have you got any questions for us? And that's very, again, an important consideration. I've been involved with many teacher interviews or school leader interviews, and the kind of questions that the candidates ask are interested and they're noted. So coming back to your research, you want to ask questions about the job specifically. You probably want to ask questions about the team or the location or the, the conditions, that sort of thing. Number two, I would be a little bit cautious with that. And again, I know some of you are going to see university interviews more than job interviews later on. You can discuss the salary and the benefits and the terms and conditions, but I would suggest leaving that towards the end of the process, because it doesn't necessarily look great if your first question is, what time do I have to be in work, or what time can I leave, or what are my holidays? That's probably one of the last questions that you're going to ask. And probably one of my last points is that you can talk about what's next. So is there another interview, or when would I hear back from the panel? You can thank them, and you can thank them for their consideration as well. Okay. One more thing in the chat here. Yeah, it's very good to ask questions at the end, and thank you, Marshad, for your input here. Sorry, Mershad. It's good to ask questions at the end, but I'm just saying, think about them, think about what you're going to ask, including if it's a university interview. Some of you might be going for, universities around the world, and you'll be asking questions about the course and about research and about assessment, etc. But plan your questions. Don't go in without those in mind. Okay, now then, with the idea that there may be some questions I don't know, there's quite a lot of coverage, and I hope it was useful. It's probably a little bit fast, but these are my details, and obviously I'm pleased to be with you this morning. So if you've got any questions, I'm going to stop this share in a minute. If you've got any questions, then please you can just pop them in the chat box, or ask them verbally. That's fine. I think we've got 3 minutes left, which is just about right, hopefully. Okay, so let me stop sharing that. Okay, right, so I've given you a lot of input. I've given you a couple of homework tasks to practice some of these things and to make a note of, planning that you do for universities or for jobs, if you're going for jobs. We've got a mixture of audiences. I know we have some teachers and some school-based colleagues as well who have been through this process. So are there any questions, please? Can anybody who has a question now just pop it in? We've got 33 participants, which is great. Any questions based on what you've seen this morning? How should you respond to tell me about yourself? Oh, right, that's a tricky one, isn't it? The natural thing that people do there is they start listing their career history. So let's say that you're 30 or 35 years old, they start talking about their jobs. What the interviewer often wants is to find out about you as a personality. So they might want to know about your situation in terms of your family, or your, where you live, these sorts of things, what you're interested in, what you enjoy. Again, think about what you're saying in terms of interests and hobbies, sports, pastimes, all that kind of thing. They often want to get a picture of you outside of the work scenario. And again, you can ask, I had this quite recently actually, I'd asked, do you mean professionally, or do you mean what sort of focus do you want me to give in the answer? So you can clarify the question. Okay, 1 minute left. Any more questions? No? All right, well, I hope it was useful, and thank you all for joining us this morning, and I wish you success in your interviews in the future. Okay? Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Evans, for this very insightful, short and sweet session. I think a lot of the things that you mentioned resonated with me as well, particularly when it comes to doing online sessions and interviews. My camera is here, my notes are here, the screen's up there. Yeah. Where do I look, right?
Exactly.
It's always a bit complex, but I know I'll be practicing that as well, as will many of our students. So thank you for your time.
Very welcome. Great to be here.
And thank you to everyone who has joined us for the session today. Our next speaker will be on at 11, so please hang tight and we'll see you soon.